how people's minds work. Anyway, Nancy Murray I met first as a playwright. I got to review one of her plays a long time ago. She's not writing plays anymore, she's writing memoirs, I guess. But she graduated with an MFA in creative writing and publishing arts from Baltimore University. Her writing has most recently appeared in the Baltimore Fishbowl, BMoreArt, What Weekly Magazine, Welter, and the Baltimore Post-Examiner. She's an accomplished playwright, she is, and speaking as a critic, storyteller, and her memoir, One Child for Another, will be published in May 2015.
Which is nice.
Nancy. And you can buy it downstairs.
I don't have any trouble with projecting. In fact, one time at the 510, Michael had laryngitis, and I was the loudmouth in the room, so I did the talking for him. So I don't need this. I want to say my thank you, everybody, for coming. I'm personally thrilled to be following Matt Porterfield because his films are pretty cool, and I wasn't supposed to be following him. I made a switcheroo so that I would be last, but. I was thrilled to be able to get a peek at one of his upcoming screenplays. Because as a playwright, that's like my cousin, right? So, so I was really excited to get a chance to do that. So, and we are all lucky to get a sneak peek. Baltimore's had a dramatic week, and a lot of terrible things have happened here this week, and a lot of good, hopefully, is going to come out of that. And so. I wanted to find some way to say that and tie it into the book too, and so this book is about a terrible thing happening to me when I was very young. It's a memoir, and the beautiful things that came out of that story. So suddenly it sounds really cheesy to have just made the Baltimore situation about me. But I didn't intend to do that. I meant to make me as a part of the Baltimore situation here. Anyway, so what happened when I was 16, resulted in me placing a child for adoption. The story is about a year in my life when I went away, I went into hiding, I lived with nuns, I had the child, I placed it for adoption. There is some information about later when the child grew up and came to find me. And I am absolutely thrilled to tell everybody today, it's not night yet, today that child's parents are here today to hear the reading. So Kathy Hosty and Tom Hadley, my personal heroes, and I'm grateful to them for, as I've told her many times, I owe them the moon and the stars. So I'm going to read, it's a short book, maybe about 120 pages, so when you do readings, you know, if you read from a lot of the things, if you come to all of my readings, I'll end up reading the whole book to you. So, so I'm just gonna pick out one chapter, and it'll give you a sense, I think. It's February 1980. My parents drove, and I felt queasy in the back seat of our Chevy Impala. By then, I had turned throwing up into an art form of sorts, learning to track each nuance of sensation and to navigate my thoughts and actions to control, to the best of my ability, the force and the direction, and in some cases, timing of my attacks of sickness. On the way down University Boulevard, past the savory scented fast food places that made my stomach flip over, we weaved through the dizzying traffic of the day. I distracted myself from the nausea by concentrating on the fear that was welling up alongside the bile, but was gaining on it fast in terms of force and effect. It turns out that abstract terror proved to be the only thing that kept morning sickness at bay. I was on my way to St. Anne's Infant and Maternity Home, an institution that was nestled in the woods of Prince George's County. The institution was going to be my home until I gave birth and gave my child to a stranger. My father drove the car in silence. The radio was not on, it never was. And my mother, normally the master of filling in uncomfortable silence with even more uncomfortable empty chatter, said nothing. What she was thinking at the time was, and always will be, a mystery to me. What I did know, because I had heard her rant about it many times in the past, was that she judged young girls who got pregnant, and she condemned adoption and abortion equally. This was, of course, before her 16-year-old daughter stood before her in tears with a pitiful overnight bag packed for 7 months away. Walking into St. Anne's was jarring at best. The lawn and building looked just like the grounds of a hospital. There was a circular driveway just outside the 6 sets of double doors that made up the front of the building. Inside, the grand foyer consisted of cold hard floors, neutral walls, and drafty high ceilings. Much of the building was dedicated to the housing and care of children who had no parents, or who had been removed from homes where the parents were unfit. It didn't feel warm or welcoming there. It felt institutional. To the left, there was a reception area where I might have filled in my chart and presented my insurance card. I went up and said hello to the woman sitting dull-eyed at the counter, and I told her who I was. I didn't bring my readers, sorry. My parents and I were told to wait in the lobby, and we did so silently until we were greeted by Sister Irene, a short, delicate-boned woman with black hair that peeked out of her habit, and Sister Rosalie, a large, imposingly tall woman with gray curls cut short. Her face was square, and her eyes were disproportionately small for her head. I'm being heckled. We talked for a short time, and then Sister Irene told my mom and dad that it was best if they just let me come up to my room by myself. Then they could come back tomorrow if they wanted to visit. But now it was time for me to get acclimated to my new environment. I felt a welling of fear boil up into my throat, and then I felt it slowly simmer into anger. I didn't want to live for the next 7 months in a cold institution with nuns. My parents left, my father tight-lipped and hunched over, and my mother teary-eyed and bumbling around for some excuse to linger a little longer. "Mom, get out," I said impatiently. We stood for a moment looking at each other and willing ourselves not to cry. Then my mother nodded her head, leaned on my father's arm, and left the building. I watched them go as Sister Rosalie gave Sister Irene instructions to give me the tour, and then turned on her heel and left us too. "Okay, let's start with your room," Sister Irene said without a hint of a smile. We made our way to the rickety old elevator and waited to get to the secret second floor, the one where girls came to hide their shame. But I was not feeling any shame at all. Why should I feel shame, I thought. Where was their shame, hiding girls away like lepers? I said nothing when the elevators opened to the gray and white tile walls, the formica floors. I said nothing about the giant Raggedy Ann doll propped up in a wooden rocking chair as if waiting to greet us with a hideous, sewn-on expression of artificial cheer. My heart sank when we stepped into the space that would be my home, but I said nothing. As we toured the floor, Sister Irene explained the rules. Never leave the second floor without permission and an escort. Never leave the premises of the building without a nun present. You will be dressed and at breakfast every morning by 7 a.m., no exceptions. Directly in front of us was a large common area, complete with 4 sofas, several end tables, and a large screen TV. There was a ping pong table in the back, and there was a kitchen off to the right of the main sitting area. In the kitchen was a beat-up old table and several mismatched chairs. There was a fridge and a counter, but no stove. My sister Irene explained that this was both for safety and to make sure we all went down to meals together. Prayers follow breakfast every morning. It's mandatory that all girls attend. Lights out by 10 o'clock, no exceptions. Visiting the other girls' rooms after hours is strictly forbidden. We walked along the narrow hallway to the 4th door on the right. A metal plate with a small rectangular window was fastened to the door at eye level, and a thin strip of white poster board with my name on it had been slipped into the window. Sister Irene opened the door and stood aside for me. There was nothing in the room but a twin-size bed, a narrow oak dresser, and a rocking chair. The bed was made with white sheets tightly tucked at the corners. A thin white blanket was folded at the bottom of the bed. The only window looked out onto the lawn, which was dusted with snow and surrounded by bare trees. There was a crucifix on the wall behind the bed, and I felt like I had arrived in prison. There is a payphone in the hall. You are welcome to use it before 10 p.m. Classes begin at 9 a.m. and are mandatory. You will meet with a tutor 3 days a week to continue your high school education. You will be here long enough to get your GED, and you are expected to do so. My heart was pounding. Only a small portion of what she was saying was sinking in. The gist of it was that my freedom was gone, and my life, as I knew it, was drastically curtailed. I felt the swirling of fluids in my throat as my stomach started heaving. Sister Irene swiftly took me to the ladies' room down the hallway. The bathroom had 5 stalls, 4 toilets, 8 shower stalls with white plastic curtains held up by rusty rings and a row of sinks, with tiny mirrors on the walls in front of them. There were outlets for blow dryers and curlers. Sister Irene stood stiffed back and arm folded. She waited as I retched, but offered no comfort. When I finished, she went straight back to the duty at hand. You are to respect the privacy of the other girls. You are never to mention anyone's name to anyone outside of the building. There are parenting and baby classes every Tuesday, and they are mandatory. I was beginning to think of Sister Irene as a drill sergeant, and myself as a new recruit for this army of sinners sent to boot camp purgatory. At least 2 arts and crafts classes must be attended each week. You will meet with a therapist once a week without exception. Once my stomach calmed down, my anger returned. Sister Irene's lack of emotion made me want to do something to her, to be dramatic. So before we returned to the room, I told her that I was a Satan worshiper. She didn't react. We went to the room and I walked over to the bed where the crucifix was hanging, and I reached for it. You are not to move anything in the room, Sister Irene said monotonously. It's all here for a purpose. Well, I don't believe in this purpose, I said as I removed the crucifix from the wall. I didn't know it then, but that gesture of defiance and Sister Irene's casual response to it, she reached for it and hung it back up, would become the basis of our future friendship. Over the months I lived there, I continued to do things to and with that crucifix that were intended to annoy the nuns. I hung it upside down. I hid it in different places on the floor. I dressed it up in toilet paper clothes. I made funny hats for it. Then they continued to silently correct the situation, and old Jesus would be hanging properly every time I returned to my room. That's it.